Hello friends, welcome to this edutainment YouTube channel. Today I am going to discuss the features of Romanticism and Romantic age. Let's start. The first feature. Like many other literary movements, it developed in reaction to the dominant style of the preceding period. Next feature, tradition of Elizabethan writers. That means in this period, in writing, we find some features of the Elizabethan writers. Next feature, an emphasis on emotional and imaginative spontaneity. In the definition of the poetry by William Wordsworth, we find the definition like this. Poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, taking its origin from emotion recollected in tranquility. Next feature, the importance of self-expression and individual feeling. Romantic poetry is one of the heart and the emotions, exploring the truth of the imagination rather than scientific truth. The I voice is central. That means first person, I. It is the central of the romantic writing. It is the poet's perceptions and feelings that matter. Next feature, vivid sensory descriptions. In the poem To Autumn by John Keats, we find the all kind of sensory images. Next feature, an almost religious response to nature. That means nature was God to them. Nature was a thing whom we all should respect and worship. William Wordsworth said that he is the worshipper of nature. Romantic writers were concerned that nature should not just be seen scientifically, but as a living force, either made by a creator or as in some way divine. Shelley was an atheist, and for a while, William Wordsworth was a pantheist. Pantheism is the belief that God is in everywhere. Much of their poetry celebrated the beauty of nature or protested the ugliness of the growing industrialization of the century. Next feature, glorification of nature. William Wordsworth in the poem Tintern Abbey writes that nature never did betray the heart that loved her. That means nature to them is very faithful friend. Next feature is emphasis on aesthetic beauty. In Lord Byron's poem She Walks in Beauty, this aestheticism can be found. Next feature is themes of solitude. In the poem Daffodils, William Wordsworth writes, "For oft when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon the inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude." In this regard, we can mention the Lake District. In this district, William Wordsworth and later other poets lived in seclusion, in isolated place, in the lap of nature. And this Lake District, this solitude, this solitary place, worked as the poetic inspiration to the romantic writers in England. Next, we can mention the place Concord. Concord is the name of a village. It was far from the madding crowd. And this seclusion, this isolated place, inspired many writers like Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, etc. Next feature is a capacity for wonder and consequently a reverence for the freshness and innocence of the vision of childhood. Next feature is emphasis on the imagination as a positive and creative faculty. In the poem Ode to a Nightingale by John Keats, we find the line like this: "Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his parts, but on the viewless wings of poesy. The next feature is an interest in primitive forms of art. For instance, in the work of early poets, in ancient ballads and folk songs, some of the romantics turned back to past times to find inspiration, either to the medieval period or to Greek and Roman mythology, Gothic and the medieval revival, myths and mysticism of the Middle Ages, etc. In the poem Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley, we find the line like this: "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." Next feature is an interest in and concern for the outcasts of society. Those outcasts are tramps, beggars, obsessive characters, and the poor and disregarded are especially evident in romantic poetry. Next feature is an idea of the poet as a visionary figure. Poet as a visionary figure with an important role to play as prophet in both political and religious terms. Next feature is subjectivity. Subjectivity means the presence of the writer in the writing. Where is the writing? There is the writer. In the poem Ode to a Nightingale, John Keats writes like this: "My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains. 1 minute passed, and lithy words had sunk." Next feature is focus on the self and autobiography. For example, Jean-Jacques Rousseau writes his autobiography, which is a romantic autobiography, where we find the emphasis on the self. The name of his autobiography is Confessions. Next feature is celebration of artistic creativity and imagination. In the poem Prelude by William Wordsworth, we find the line like this: "Imagination, here the power so called, through sad incompetence of human speech, that awful power rose from the mind's abyss like an unfeathered vapor that enwraps." In the poem Daffodils, we find the line like this: "I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze." Next feature is individuality, democracy, personal freedom. Romantic poets or Romanticism in some extent was inspired from French Revolution. The motto of French Revolution was liberty, equality, fraternity. That means liberty, equality, and fraternity. These are evident in the writings of Romantic writers, where individuality, democracy, personal freedom are prevalent. Jean-Jacques Rousseau wrote, "Man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains." It means that there is the personal freedom, but there is the discipline. Next feature is revolutionary spirit. Romanticism was inspired in some extent from French Revolution, so revolutionary spirit must be there. In the poem Ode to the West Wind by P.B. Shelley, we find the line like this: "Drive my dead thoughts over the universe like withered lips to quicken a new birth." Here we also find the line like this: "The trumpet of a prophecy, O wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind?" In the Prometheus Unbound, we find also revolutionary spirit. In the poem Hellas, P.B. Shelley wrote, "The world's great age begins anew, the golden years return, The earth doth like a snake renew her winter weeds outworn. Heaven smiles, and faiths and empires gleam like wrecks of a dissolving dream. Next feature is spirituality. In the poem Tintern Abbey by William Wordsworth, we find the line like this: and I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of the setting suns, and the round ocean, and the living air, and the blue sky, and in the mind of man, emotion and a spirit that impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and rolls through all things. Next feature is supernatural elements. That means we find romance in Romanticism. As for example, in the short story The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, in the poem Christabel by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, in the novel Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, we find the romance. Next feature is nature as a teacher. In the poem The Tables Turned, William Wordsworth writes, "Come forth into the light of things, let nature be your teacher." Next feature is celebration of the simple life. William Wordsworth lived in Dove Cottage in Lake District, far from the city life. And he writes, "Plain living but high thinking. It should be the code of life." Next feature is interest in the rustic or pastoral life. William Wordsworth writes, "God is there where poor heart lies." Next feature is use of common language. In the preface to Lyrical Ballads, William Wordsworth writes, "Poets should write in the language really used by men." Next feature is use of common subjects. The subjects should be common, not far reach of the common people. Next feature is glorification of childhood and women. This is why nature is called Mother Nature. Childhood stage is the purest stage of human life. It is very innocent time. This is why in the book Emile by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, we find a boy hero, a hero who is not old. The hero is younger one, a child, a boy. So friends, Romantic movement was a movement in art and literature in the 18th and 19th centuries in revolt against the neoclassicism of the previous centuries. The German poet Friedrich Schlegel, who is given credit for firstly using the term romantic to describe literature. He defined romantic literature as literature depicting emotional matter in an imaginative form. Victor Hugo said Romanticism, liberalism in literature. Theodore Watts Danton called this Romanticism Renaissance of wonder. Thanks, dear friends. Hope to see you in the next video.